Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this virtual town hall. My name is Robert Wittenberg. I am the state representative in Southeast Oakland County for the communities of Berkeley, Huntington Woods, Oak Park, Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge, Hazel Park, and Royal Oak Township. I hope we find you all doing well and you and your families are healthy. We hope that this is going to be a nice event for all of you to tune into and be really informative. I want to thank Representative Bolden and Senator Moss for partnering with me on this. I want to thank DIFS, Department of Insurance and Financial Services, and Director Fox for joining us and some other members of her team. As you all know, because you're here, there are changes to our auto insurance law here in the state of Michigan that are going to take effect July 1st. And so we wanted to host this town hall to make you all aware of what those changes are. Now, the three of us, the legislators on this town hall, had our concerns about the legislation, and I know Senator Moss and Representative Bolden will talk a little bit more about some of that, but this is the law. This is what's going to be taking effect July 1st, and so we want to make sure that people have all the necessary information. And so, again, that's why we are hosting this town hall. So we hope that you find this informative and helpful. If you have questions, I think they already typed that out there, but you can type your questions into the box and we will try to get to everyone's questions. Otherwise, once we're done, we will give you our respective contact information and you can always reach out to us. We're always here to help. But just want to thank you all for tuning in and I'll kick it off now to my colleague, Representative Bolden.
Thank you so much, Representative Wittenberg, and thank you to DIFS for participating in this town hall. I'm Representative Kyra Bolden. I represent the 35th House District, which is Southfield, Lathrop Village, Beverly Hills, Bingham Farms, and Franklin. And because this legislation will be implemented on July 1st, we wanted to make sure that you had all the information about what's going to happen as far as car insurance moving forward. A little bit about my background. I actually practiced in the area of no fault before serving in the legislature, and I also was a staff attorney in Wayne County 3rd Circuit Court, where no fault was 80% of the docket. So I have gotten my feet wet in this area, and so just want to make sure that you all are aware of some of the changes that are going forward. I will stop there and I will kick it to Senator Moss, and I hope along the discussion we'll be able to just chime in with additional thoughts and answer your questions. Senator Moss.
Thank you, Representative Bolden. Thank you, Representative Wittenberg. I'm really glad that everybody has the opportunity now to join us. Typically in normal times, we would be having town halls just about every month, and I'm looking forward to getting back into that rhythm and routine, and certainly have appreciated my partnership with State Representative Wittenberg and State Representative Bolden as we look to inform you on things that are going on in Lansing and how they impact us back home. I represent 11 communities in southern Oakland County, and this is an issue, auto no-fault insurance, that is important in every corner of the district. We know our rates are high, and so that is something that I'm acutely aware of, and I'm no different than any other resident of my district as I sit here in my home, and I'm also impacted by high billing in our community here where I live. So I did not support this bill when it came through the legislature. Neither did Representative Wittenberg or Representative Bolden. But we have to navigate through this law together, and the work doesn't stop to strengthen this law. I think auto no fault is a term that has been misunderstood and weaponized, but just like I think the term Obamacare was, once people dive into it and understand what it is, the provisions are popular and provide critical health care. And no fault is health insurance for people who get into a car accident. So I don't have the confidence that I will be able to predict what type of accident I may get in. And that's why the unlimited no fault benefit system remains intact for unpredictable future healthcare needs. If you change your coverage as a result of this law, you will need to be aware what care will and will not remain and at what cost. And that's why I am so excited to be partnering with the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, and in particular, Director Anita Fox, who has helped us as legislators navigate through this law, has answered our constituent questions, has been transparent, honest, and accountable. And I know we'll do an excellent job fielding the questions you will have about this new law that we are all going to have to adjust with together. So I want to kick it over to Director Fox for some introductory remarks and more about the new law that we will all be utilizing in just about a month's time. So Director Fox, please take it away.
Thank you so much to all of our sponsors today. I want to just say a little bit about our sponsors of this event and just to thank them and to thank the residents of their respective districts for joining us today for what they've identified as an important conversation. So Senator Moss, thank you, and thank to those who from the 11th Senate District. You have been a tireless advocate for ethics and accountability in government, the work that you have done to make sure that that workers are protected during COVID, and what's going to happen in this next response has been so important to our state, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here with you to provide this information to your constituents. And Representative Wittenberg, as the Vice Chair of the Insurance Committee, we have so appreciated your insight and the work that you've done to help us get here. We know the law isn't perfect, but we want to talk about the changes and how they might be most effectively reviewed and beneficial to your constituents in the form that the law is in now, as you mentioned. Even though it may not be perfect, it is the law that we are working with, and we do think there are some things that that people need to know so that they can make the absolute best choices for their families. And we thank you for your work on the Insurance Committee, on gun violence, on education, all of those things that are so important to the well-being and opportunity of the citizens of our state. Representative Bolden, your work on the Select Committee on auto insurance rates was the foundation of that got these discussions going. Many times the issue of auto insurance reform has come up, and this is the first time in decades that there has been a change, and as you've all mentioned, there may be more changes, but the need for change was identified by your committee and others, and we were happy to work with you on that. We appreciate, we also do work in healthcare, and we know what an advocate you have been for affordable healthcare as well. So I wanted to take a minute to thank you for the work that you do for the people of Michigan, to highlight some of the things that you've done and the important work that you do partnering with our department on these insurance and financial services issues. So with that, I want to just talk a little bit about the law at kind of a high level. What does it do? A little bit explain about no fault. And then I'm going to turn it over to my team. Zach Dillinger from my team is going to go through a presentation that will get a little bit more into the details about the actual choices that families can make and where they can go to get some additional information through our department. At the end of that, I'll be available to take whatever questions you have, and then we'll turn it back over to make sure that everybody gets, as Representative Wittenberg mentioned, contact information so that questions that aren't answered or additional things that you may need, so you have an easy way to access all those things. So a little bit about myself. I was appointed by Governor Whitmer when she took office in January of 2019. I practiced law a lot in the insurance coverage area in Washington, D.C. and Michigan before being tapped to lead this department during some really exciting times, starting with the auto no fault reform. So the first thing, we've all heard that Michigan, and you heard it today, has a great system, and in a no fault system, and also providing the highest benefits for accident victims in the country. And as Senator Moss indicated, the only state that has these unlimited lifetime benefits, medical benefits, if you were injured in an auto accident. And those truly are fantastic benefits if you are catastrophically injured in an auto accident. but they're also the most expensive benefits. And as everyone's mentioned, you know, it's that balance between trying to find good care, but affordable rates as well. And so many drivers in Michigan were going uninsured. They, you know, we had a high rate of people in certain areas, especially where people were uninsured because they couldn't pay the premiums, or they were having to make some really tough financial decisions for their families, which in these times have to even be more difficult. And one of the things I've been asked is, why wouldn't we put this off in the middle of a pandemic? And the reason is because to the extent that there are savings to be recognized under this law, there seems to be no better time than to push ahead and see if we can push those savings out to Michigan families. So a little bit about no fault. No fault system. You'll hear about the different parts of a no-fault policy, but a lot of what we're going to talk about is this personal injury protection, which is the part of a no-fault policy that covers you and your family, or those who are covered under your policy, if you're injured in an auto accident, regardless of whether it was your fault or someone else's fault. And I will tell you, I was in an accident a couple of years ago on my way to work, driving along, minding my own business, middle lane, traveling the speed limit. Somebody ran a red light, totaled my car. Had no license, no insurance, and as my insurance company is responding to make sure that my family's health care needs were met and that my car, you know, I had collision on my car and we were going to look at that and what other things had to be taken care of. And my first thought was probably what a lot of people's would be was like, why is my insurance company paying when I was doing nothing wrong and someone ran a red light, no question, but it was their fault? Why should my insurance company pay? But then I had to stop and realize that what the alternative would be, that rather than knowing that I immediately had health coverage and other kind of coverages that I had chosen for myself and my family, I would have been relying on the choices that other driver made, which meant no insurance, which meant that before I could be paid, I would have to resolve any issue of liability. And on trade-off, I was so happy that I could just have my things taken care of without having, and that I could make choices, and I knew what coverage I had and wasn't fortuitous about being in an accident with someone who may not have bought insurance. So that's what no fault does. It takes away that question of fault, which, depending on which side you are, can sound sort of odd sometimes, but puts it into your hands to make sure that you have insurance. So what the new law did was an attempt to try and keep no fault, but improve it. And when the governor signed this historic no fault legislation, I think she had three goals. One would be that there was a reduction in the cost of insurance, because everybody agrees that the insurance was too expensive. But you wanted to make sure that those costs were sustained, not in 1 year, that those cost reductions. And so the law builds in 8 years of reductions. Second thing, wanted to make sure that there were choices, that we still kept our highest benefits in the country, which we have. The only state to still allow those you to choose unlimited. And even the other benefits that you choose are still at or above the highest coverage limits available in the country. And there was a hope to increase the consumer protections under the law. And you'll hear about some of those, some of the factors that insurance companies can no longer use when they're rating you. Some other things like going to prior approval, where the department has to approve rates before they can be used by an insurance company. Some other things that aren't in the law, but we're able to do as a result of the changes. And one of those was we now have independent actuaries that have reviewed all the mathematical computations that were involved in setting the rates. And before, the department in past administrations always relied on the actuarial assumptions and conclusions made by the insurance company's actuaries. And now we have hired our own and independent so that we could file objections and push back as we saw the rates come in. And in addition to the mandatory minimum reductions in this PIP medical coverage, this part that covers you for your medical costs in the accident, we are happy to report that we have finished just this week reviewing all the filings, and that the statewide average exceeded the required minimum reductions for those coverages, and that those will stay in effect for 8 years. So that's kind of the general overview of why this legislation was important. And certainly it's not perfect and there's more work to be done, but we want you to be prepared for those changes that come forward, so you'll have the best understanding you can about how you can choose what it is you want for your family as you weigh your family's needs, insurance needs, and your budget, which are both important to the decisions we make all the time on insurance. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Zach Dillinger to go through a little bit more detail about the details on the law and where you can find more information. So with that, Zach Dillinger.
Thank you, Director Fox. As the Director said, my name is Zach Dillinger. I work in the communications area here at DIFS, and I am here to dive a little deeper into some of these changes that the Senator and Representatives and Director all alluded to. We're hoping to help you understand what's happening and how to move forward. So we know the changes can seem maybe a little big, but we are here to help and here to make sure that you understand the changes that are coming this summer. And we will provide you with resources, including our website, some videos, and some publications. And you'll also be able to watch the same presentation again later on our website, as we have previously recorded the presentation for you. So with that, let's get started. All right. So first, some background about DIFS. We are fee funded and we don't require your tax dollars to operate. We regulate Michigan's insurance and financial industries, which include insurance agents, companies, mortgage companies, deferred presentment companies, or payday lenders as they're sometimes called, state chartered banks, and credit unions. In all that work, our guiding principle is that we are regulators, and that means we work for you as a consumer protection agency. Now, in our day-to-day work, we foster economic opportunity for Michigan consumers, seek to provide fair access to institutions that are safe, sound, and entitled to public confidence, and also provide financial and insurance education, as we are here doing today, to help people understand their options. So now that you know a little more about who we are, let's talk about the changes to auto insurance. To understand the changes to the law, you first need to understand that the basic Michigan auto insurance policy you must buy to drive legally has 3 mandatory parts. Now, those parts are property protection insurance, or PPI, personal injury protection medical coverage, we call that PIP, and residual liability, bodily injury, and property damage. Now, that is quite a mouthful, so we do call that BIPD for short. We'll only be speaking today about how the new law affects the last 2. So BI and PIP are our topics for the day. On the screen here now, you see the big picture changes that all of the legislators and our director have mentioned. These changes that the new no-fault law makes to the way auto insurance works. So the new law provides drivers for the first time with a choice in the level of medical coverage that they want to buy. Lowers costs while maintaining the highest benefits available in the nation, and it increases consumer protections. Now, it's important to know that most of the changes we're going to talk about take effect for policies issued or renewed after July 1st of 2020. So we're inside a month now. So let's talk PIP. Remember that PIP medical coverage is one of those mandatory 3, and it pays for medical care if policyholders are in an auto accident. Now, under the old law, everybody had to have unlimited PIP medical coverage. You didn't have a choice. If you were going to drive legally, you had to buy unlimited PIP. But now, under the new law, you'll get to choose a level of PIP which is right for you, your family, and your budget. The new available limits equal or exceed the available limits anywhere in the country, the highest benefits in the country. And Michigan is the only state where unlimited PIP medical continues to be an option that you have. So those levels that you do have access to will be unlimited coverage per person per accident. That's again what you have now. Up to $500,000 in coverage per person per accident. Up to $250,000 in coverage per person per accident. Now you see there's a second $250,000 coverage level. This one's slightly different than the first in that it allows you to exclude certain people from your policy so that you're not paying that PIP medical premium on those folks. So you can exclude them when you make your choice. There's a $50,000 in coverage per person per accident limit. That's available if the named insured is enrolled in Medicaid and everybody else in the household has either qualifying health insurance or another Michigan auto policy that provides PIP. We'll talk a little more about qualifying health insurance a little later. There's also a medical PIP opt-out. Now, this is available if you have Medicare Parts A and B, and all other members of your household have either that qualifying health insurance or, again, another Michigan auto policy. It's very important to know that if you don't make a choice, a specific choice with either your agent or your company, you will default to receiving that unlimited PIP medical coverage, and you will pay the premium associated with that option. Now, earlier we said that the new law would lower costs while maintaining benefits, and what you see on the screen is one of the most important ways that we're going to do just that. Each insurance company will be required for the next 8 years to reduce those statewide average PIP medical premiums. The amount of the reduction depends on the level chosen. So for the unlimited option, it's a required average 10% reduction. For the $500,000 levels, it's a 20% reduction. For the $250,000 options, it's a 35% reduction. And for the $50,000 option, it's a 45% average reduction. Now, here are some additional ways that the new law reduces costs. For the first time in auto insurance in Michigan, we will have a fee schedule. So unlike with health insurance or Medicare, auto insurance previously didn't have limitations on what a healthcare provider, so a doctor, a nurse, an ambulance service, what they could charge for those services in an auto accident. A fee schedule is a required cost control measure that's between the auto insurance companies and those healthcare providers to make those PIP medical services more affordable. The new law sets a schedule of fees that can be charged by those providers for those services. And this provision takes effect after July 1st of 2021. Now, earlier I said 2020. This is one of the things that takes effect next year. It's really important to know that you're not going to lose care. It just means that your healthcare costs will be better controlled. Now, also on the screen there, you see the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, or MCCA, and the assessment that they charge. So the MCCA is an association of auto insurers, which is required by the statute, which reimburses member companies for PIP medical costs which exceed an identified amount in the event of a catastrophic injury. The MCCA has already announced that as a direct result of this new law, it's able to lower that per vehicle assessment starting July 2nd, 2020, and this will save Michigan drivers at least $120 per car. Currently, the fee is $220, it's going to $100. And drivers choosing less than the unlimited PIP medical option won't pay any assessment to the MCCA at all going forward. Now, one of the most important parts of the new law is that it increases consumer protections in the insurance market and helps us all make sure that the market is fair. So the new law eliminates certain non-driving factors from rating. So when we say rating, we mean the process by which the insurance company determines how much your coverage should cost. This new law prohibits auto insurance companies from using your sex, your marital status, your home ownership status, your credit score, your educational level, your occupation, and your zip code in setting your auto insurance rate. The new law also created the Fraud Investigation Unit, which is a unit within DIFS which investigates criminal and fraudulent activity related to insurance and financial markets. Now, those folks work with the Attorney General and law enforcement agencies to prosecute those crimes. And this is a bit of a double benefit. It's not only is it a consumer protection, but it's also a cost savings method because auto insurance fraud drives up our premiums for everybody. Now, the new law also requires prior approval. So all auto insurance rates, policies, manuals, forms, all of that must now be filed with and approved by our office here at DIFS prior to being offered to you as consumers. Now, finally, the new law allows for increased fines on insurance companies, agencies, and licensed agents for certain violations of the law. So as I said before, you will need to choose a coverage level for PIP that's appropriate based on your needs and your budget. Now, to do that, your auto insurance company or agent will give you forms that describe the benefits and risks of the coverage options. Now, you may also want to talk with an auto insurance agent or company to discuss your personal auto insurance needs before you make your choice. And when you do go to make that choice, you may need some information. You may need to bring it with you. That might include information from your health insurer or your employer, which identifies individuals covered on your health insurance. You might need a statement as to whether your health policy complies with the law, which means that it does not exclude or limit auto accident injuries and has a deductible of less than $6,000. Now, earlier you heard me talk about qualifying health coverage. That is the definition of qualifying health coverage, along with some other things that I think Director Fox will touch on. Finally, if you're a Medicare or Medicaid participant, you may also need a proof of enrollment. So I mentioned that your agent or company will give you a form. What you see on the screen is a sample of what that might look like. It might look a little different than what you do see here on the form, but it will still contain all the terms and information that you will need to make your choice. It's a 4-page form, but you only have a couple of small parts to fill out, and all the information you need is included on the form itself. Now on screen, you see the first page of the form, and that has some definition of some words that you'll be seeing used elsewhere in the form, and some other important information that you should read. This sample form is also posted on our website, which is michigan.gov/auto insurance. Now let's take a closer look at the form and what you'll need to do to make your new PIP selection. So pages 2 and 3 of the form have section A. That explains the risks and benefits of the options that you have. So this means it lists out the options we talked about earlier and tells you in plain language what each choice would mean for you and the potential trade-offs you make when you choose that option. On page 4, you see section B. Now this is where you'll actually make your choice by initialing the form next to one, and please only one, of the options which are available to you. Also, when we were speaking of the $250,000 option with exclusions, this is where you would list the names and birth dates of the people in your household that you're excluding from your PIP medical coverage. You only need the names and birth dates of household members you intend to exclude from PIP medical, not everybody in the house, just those that you don't want to have PIP coverage. Also on page 4 of the form, you'll find section C. Now here you just need to initial the form next to 4 statements, which confirm that you understand what you're choosing and how it applies to you. Now also on page 4, you'll sign and date the form. And once you've given it back to your agent or company, you will have finished making your PIP choice. So as you can see, it's a fairly simple process, but it is a very important one. And you really need to understand what you're choosing before you do make that choice, and be sure you've carefully considered all of your options. So with that, we finished with what we need to talk about with PIP. So on to BIPD. So this is the third of those mandatory coverages we mentioned earlier. It's the second and final one we're going to talk about here today. So under the new law, a new choice you get to make is your level of BI coverage. BI is the portion of a no-fault policy that will pay up to certain amounts if the policyholder is found legally responsible for certain damages. It pays for those claims which are made against you. Now, currently, the minimum BI coverage level is $20,000 for a person who is hurt or killed in an accident, and $40,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident, and $10,000 for property damage in another state. So that pays if you sideswipe a fence in Ohio or hit a mailbox in Indiana, whatever. That's where that property damage coverage comes in. Now, the new law will allow drivers the ability to choose BI/PD limits that best suit your family needs. The old $20,000 per person and $40,000 per accident limits hadn't been adjusted for inflation in over 30 years. As we all know, things have gotten a little more expensive in the last 30 years. So drivers will now have the choice of purchasing coverage of $50,000 per person and $100,000 per accident, or even higher, to protect themselves against the increased potential for lawsuits. Now, if you don't make a choice, there is a default minimum, and that default minimum is $250,000 per person per accident and $500,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident. Now, you should consider consulting legal and financial advisors to determine how best to protect your assets and income before you work with your licensed insurance agent to make your choice. Now, like with your PIP choice, your company or agent will give you a form to fill out to make this new BIPD choice. The form you see on the screen is the approved form, and your company should use a form which is identical. It probably won't say sample on it, but other than that, it should be identical. We've also posted this on our website as well, so you can zoom in and read it before you go in to make your choice. And as with the PIP form, you really should read and understand the form before you fill out a couple of small areas and then sign the form to make your selection. Here, I also want you to know that we've produced videos on how to fill out the BI and PIP forms, and you can find those on our website as well. On page 1 of the BI-PD form is Part A, and it explains the BI coverage in detail and tells you what the form is about. Part B explains the potential risks you face as a driver in Michigan and explains how your BI coverage protects you. In Part C, you'll initial the form in 3 places, next to statements that confirm again that you understand the risks and benefits of the coverage you're choosing. Finally, in Part C, again, you'll sign and date the form. Once you've done that and given the form back to your agent or company, you've completed your BI-PD selection process. So to quickly recap what we've just seen, you'll have 2 forms to complete. The PIP form is where you pick the amount of medical coverage you have for your family. The BI form is where is how much your company will pay on your behalf if you're in an at-fault accident. Both forms contain all the information you need to make your selection. So with that, we've covered the big picture changes from the law that we need to talk about right now. Before we get to your questions, I do want to take some time to tell you a little more about how DIFS can help you. Perhaps the most important thing I can tell you today is that we do want to hear from you. So we are not going to be able to answer your individual questions about your specific auto insurance policy or your insurance needs, but we do have some folks in our office Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Normally they're in the office. Obviously, we're all working remotely right now. They can help answer questions that you have, whether they're auto insurance related or general insurance questions, or even financial questions. Now that call center is housed within our Office of Consumer Services. OCS also handles all complaints that come into our office. If you're concerned about your auto insurance company, maybe they're unfairly delaying or denying your claim, maybe charging you the wrong premium, or otherwise just aren't performing as they're required to under the law, we are here to help. Now, we do encourage you to first attempt to resolve your complaint directly with your agent or company, but if you can't reach a resolution, you can file a complaint in writing with us via email or through our website. And speaking of websites, we have created a new one to help educate consumers about this new law. Now, this new website is michigan.gov/auto insurance. And it includes a way to inform consumers on the auto insurance changes made by the new law, some of which we've talked about here today, tips for shopping for insurance, how to file a complaint and what that complaint process looks like, what to do if you're having issues with your insurance company, agency, or agent, and a place to report insurance fraud. Now, we have updated this website several times already, and it will continue to be updated on an ongoing basis to make sure it has the latest information for you as we do get closer to July 1st, 2020. So to reiterate, we do want to hear from you. We all work for you, and we are here to help you with these new changes. So to cap, it's important to note that in advance of your auto insurance renewal after July 1st of this year, so just about a month from today, agents and insurance companies will supply forms that describe the risks and benefits of those coverage options you have for PIP and BI. You may also want to consult with your agent to discuss your personal auto insurance needs. And please do call or email our office if you have any questions about the forms or anything else related to the new auto insurance law. Our phone number, as you see there on the screen, is 833-ASK-DIFS. We also have a auto insurance specific email, which is autoinsurance@michigan.gov. Now on that website again, we do have sample forms, videos, handouts, and a number of publications that will be very helpful. So with that, I think we've hit the highlights, and we can now take some of the questions that you've typed into the chat system. Please do feel free to ask more questions as they come up, and please remember that questions about your specific policy should be saved for our office analysts. Now with that, I'd like to introduce our question moderator, Andrea Miller, who will read your questions from the chat system. Andrea?
Thank you, Zach. It looks like we've got quite a few questions to get through. I think a majority of these will go directly to Director Fox. So let's get going. The first question is, I want to know if someone not on my insurance is covered.
Okay, well, that is a little bit hard to say without knowing who you mean. So generally speaking, resident relatives, that is people who are related to you and who reside in your same household, are covered under your policy, your auto insurance policy. So but that's something you should obviously confirm with your agent and review your policy, but that's generally speaking who's covered. If you're talking about your health insurance policy, that can be different as well. And one of the things that if you want to exclude anyone, you need to know the name and birth date of anyone who's covered under your health insurance, so that you can be sure that one way or another, either your health insurance or your PIP coverage covers them in the event of an auto accident. So if you're talking about your auto insurance, generally it's a resident relative. Health insurance, it can be different dependents can be covered. It depends on your situation and what kind of coverage you have and whether your employer covers your family or just you. So there's a lot of questions, but that should be something you confirm through your health insurance before you go to make your auto insurance choices.
Thank you. The next question comes from Mark. I contacted my auto insurance company and was told that I cannot change my PIP coverage on July 2nd, 2020, when the new law goes into effect, because my policy renews June 15th of 2020. I was told I would have to wait until December 2020 when my policy renews again. That is not fair. I should be able to change my PIP coverage on July 2nd when the new law goes into effect.
I agree with you there. And so this is what I would tell you first. I mean, obviously on June 15th, you want to renew your policy to make sure that you have policy coverage that's continuous and in effect. You wouldn't want to have an accident on June 16th and not have coverage. That being said, you should contact your agent, and it sounds like you did, and say that on July 2nd, I would like to know what my possibilities are, because I might cancel my policy and change my coverage or get an endorsement, or however the company can do it. If you do not find that that's what you're being offered, please contact our office at those numbers that Zach Dillinger gave you, that 833 ask DIFS, or send something into our autoinsurance@michigan.gov and give your information, who's, that would be relevant to that, what you asked, if you have emails, or who you contacted, who your insurer is, and we will help you resolve that. But you are right, you should be able to take advantage of those savings. What we didn't want to happen was to allow insurance companies to automatically make that decision for people, because you may or may not be better off under the new law, depending on your particular circumstances, what you choose, whether you've had tickets or accidents in the interim and the like, but it's certainly something that should be available to you if you so choose.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Carol. Do I need extra insurance if my boyfriend lives with me and we only have one car?
Well, when you say extra insurance, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I assume you want to know are you covered regardless of who is driving the car? Generally speaking, in the order of priority under the statute, you're covered for what your PIP medical, and you'll be covered for liability purposes. On the PIP side, he may be covered because you are the owner of the car. He may be able to get coverage on your use, but other coverages like bodily injury and other things that he causes, he may not have coverage for that because he's not a resident relative. Definitely something you want to talk about with your agent to make sure that you're protected all the way around, because generally speaking, that person won't have coverage under your policy if they're not related to you and or don't reside in your household.
Our next question is regarding Medicare. If Medicare is primary and does not cover any automobile accidents, are seniors unable to take advantage of the potential discounts?
Great question, because this is one of the things that's a change under the law. You're quite right that under the law as it exists today, before the July 2nd changes, that Medicare has taken the position that since everyone in Michigan had unlimited lifetime health care under their policies for an auto accident, Medicare as a secondary payer, or as kind of they pay if you don't have other coverage, would say Medicare is not going to pay because you obviously have coverage. Under the new law, because a Medicare enrollee can opt out of the medical portion of PIP, Medicare will cover as the primary payer because it's the secondary payer, but it's primary because you have no other coverage for that. If you had some other coverage that would cover it, Medicare would step aside, but they will not refuse to cover you for an auto accident simply because you have coverage in Michigan if you have opted out of the medical coverage. We have confirmed that, and it is a subject of a bulletin that we put out that was reviewed by the federal government to make sure that that was accurate.
Great, thank you. The next question, my agent quoted me a fee when I tried to get insurance before. She told me it was because I haven't had auto insurance in a couple of years. Will this fee go away and allow me to purchase insurance without any added fees?
Another great question because it highlights another portion of the law that's different and an additional consumer protection. So under the old law, we know a lot of people didn't buy auto insurance or a fair amount because they couldn't afford it. And so we had a disproportionate number of uninsured drivers. There was kind of a double whammy because if you couldn't afford the insurance and then were able to get back into the market and get yourself covered and comply with the law, you could be charged a penalty for the period for having been uninsured for a period of time. Under the new law, starting on July 2nd and for 18 months thereafter, there's kind of an amnesty period where insurers are not permitted under the law to charge you that penalty for becoming insured when you previously weren't insured. So this is a great opportunity for people who weren't insured before because they couldn't afford it. Now they have some choices, maybe more affordable. And for those who will be charging a penalty for being out of it, and that was another barrier to being insured, that will go away on July 2nd, but only for 18 months. So it's a great time to get into compliance with the law and protect your family under an auto insurance policy.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from M.E. Clark. What happens to the money that we have invested for 40 years in the catastrophic fund? How will you protect the clients that are being cared for now by the catastrophic fund and are supposed to be grandfathered in? Wasn't that fund a $25 billion fund?
So basically what that fund was the money that had to be set in place to secure the claims for people who've already been injured in an auto accident. And those claims are substantial. There are people who are still receiving benefits today who were injured right when the law took effect 30 years ago. And as you can imagine, someone who's catastrophically injured as a child and has a whole lifetime of care, that can be expensive. And so that's what that fund was intended to do. We know that fund, as big as it wasn't big enough to cover all of the claims that were outstanding and the projected future claims for people who were going to be injured in the future. Now, having now put into place a fee schedule, MCCA, as you heard, was able to take away the assessment on every car for the deficit, for the fact that they couldn't cover all the claims, and to reduce the amount of money being charged going forward. So anybody who has already been injured before the changes to the law on July 2nd will still be covered for as long as as long as they have coverage claims for that accident. Unlike health insurance, which only covers you from whether the policy is in effect, meaning that if you go to the doctor today and have health coverage, it's covered. And if you lose your health coverage tomorrow, you have no coverage. An auto policy vests on the day of your accident. So anybody who's already injured, all the money paid into the MCCA will cover those claims. The law also says that if the MCCA gets over a certain amount of surplus, that has to be refunded to insurance companies who must in turn refund it to the policyholders. So one way or the other, it'll either be spent on accident victims or will be refunded to policyholders. If you choose unlimited coverage going forward, you will continue to pay into the MCCA and you will continue to be covered for that lifetime medical benefits. And if you choose a lesser amount, you will no longer be paying into the MCCA. Hope that answers the question. I think that kind of covers all the different permutations of how you might tap the MCCA or how you might be charged for that. But thank you for that question.
Great, thank you. Can you please explain what qualifying health coverage is and if I can opt out of PIP if I have it?
Okay, So qualifying health coverage, the idea behind it, if you think of it this way, kind of gives you a good way to understand what it is. The law requires you to have qualified health coverage if you want to opt out or exclude people from coverage. And the reason for that is to make sure that if you opt out of the medical coverage under PIP, that you have another fund, another insurance fund to pay for it so that you're not left with an auto accident and no health coverage. So basically, qualified health coverage means that you have Medicare Parts A, both Parts A and B, and if you have that, you can opt out of the medical coverage. If you have people under your policy who have health insurance that does not exclude or limit coverage for auto accidents and has a deductible of less than $6,000, that's qualified health coverages under the law. Or if you have access that the person you want to exclude has their own Michigan health insurance policy, so we know that it has Michigan auto coverage, so we know that it'll have PIP coverage under it, then you can exclude that person as well. So it's another policy, whether a health policy or an auto policy, that will provide medical coverages that does not exclude auto accidents and does not have a deductible in excess of $6,000. Then you can exclude coverage for PIP medical under your auto policy.
Thank you. It looks like we have time for about 2 more. I don't have health insurance. Is it mandatory that I buy unlimited PIP coverage?
If you do not have health insurance, your auto policy will act as health coverage. How much health coverage you have under your auto policy is one of the choices you make. So the fact that you don't have health coverage may come into part of what you weigh in deciding what your family's needs are. So if you choose the $250,000 limit, that's how much coverage you'll have, medical coverage, for each person injured in the accident. If you choose unlimited, everybody has unlimited lifetime benefits, but you'll pay more for the policy. If you choose 500, each person injured has $500,000 of medical coverage. Whether or not you have health and coverage, you will be able to choose at those limits. If you don't have health coverage, obviously one of the things you can't do is opt out, and anybody who doesn't have qualifying health coverage can't be excluded under your PIP policy, but you're not required to choose the unlimited level if you don't have health coverage.
Thank you. Last question. What are my options if while riding my motorcycle, a car hits me? Will PIP benefits still be an option?
So how this has worked in the past is that motorcyclists, because of the increased risk that riding a motorcycle represents as opposed to driving an automobile, they were not able to buy PIP coverage at an affordable price. It was unaffordable, and so it was not or not offered at all by the insurers. So the prior law said that if a motorcyclist was injured in an accident involving an automobile, regardless of who was at fault, that the motorcyclist would have PIP coverage from the insured driver's policy. Well, in effect, what that meant is every motorcyclist had unlimited lifetime PIP medical benefits. The law has not changed the fact that it's still that a injured motorcyclist can still claim under the PIP policy issued to a driver regardless of fault. But since we now know that the driver can choose something less than unlimited, a motorcyclist may have less than unlimited coverage for his or her injuries in the event of a motorcycle accident. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have any other options. For example, if they have their own health coverage, that could pay once they don't have PIP coverage. Another thing is that if they are not at fault, if there's an at-fault driver, they could sue the at-fault driver for the excess medical coverage if they have medical costs in excess of whatever limit that driver chose. So they're still covered under the auto's PIP policy. It's just not necessarily lifetime unlimited as it was when everyone had to choose that option. Hope that makes that clear.
Sure. I think, Director, it looks like Representative Bolden would like to speak up on something.
Great. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Director Fox, for the overview. I wanted to chime in because I actually have a bill on the motorcycle issue. You did a great job in kind of laying out the issue. If a motorcyclist gets into an accident with a car after July 1st, the motorcyclist would have to look to the insurance of the motor vehicle that they were in an accident with, even if the motorcyclist themselves has unlimited coverage. So if the motor vehicle driver has a cap or some type of $250,000 coverage, they would have to exhaust that insurance and wouldn't be able to use their own for that purpose. So I actually introduced a bill to change the order of priority, because I think that is something that was just simply left out. And that's a real technical fix to make sure that motorcyclists have the coverage that they themselves want to have and not relying upon the motor vehicle driver.
Yep. So that, Representative, is a good point to bring up, which is that as it stands now, if a motorcyclist has their own car and has an auto insurance policy, they would not have coverage under that policy. So when I said that they couldn't get the coverage, I meant for the motorcycle. So that's a good point to bring up, that as it stands now, they cannot even access a policy they have on a vehicle that they own that would not extend to their injuries while they were riding their motorcycle. So thank you for that clarification. We look forward to looking at that bill with you.
Yep, and I think Representative Wittenberg, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you. Just a question. I know when Zach was reviewing the rate reductions when it comes to PIP, I know that's one specific line item when it comes to your insurance coverage. As the insurance companies are now, filing their rates with you all, what have you seen with the other portions, and what have you seen? And then additionally, two questions at one. Our area, like, in the Metro Detroit area, we have rates that have been significantly higher than other parts of the state. When you look at the Upper Peninsula or the Lower Peninsula, how have the rates that you've seen come in, how are they impacted for our constituents in our respective districts?
Mm-hmm. I don't have the exact data on that, but I can talk a little bit in generalities. But first, about the other coverages. We also reviewed the other coverages that weren't subject to mandatory reductions. And one of the things we were interested in looking at is whether we had heard anecdotally, and I know there'd been concern from some groups that the increases, for example, to the bodily injury limits under the new law would essentially wipe out the savings from PIP coverage. And though I will tell you, kind of the changes in bodily injury premiums, how those rates were affected, depended a lot on the carrier and their loss experience in that market. So some showed reductions, some showed mild increases, and some showed more significant increases. But overall, we found that it may reduce, as you can imagine, because now there are higher limits required on the BI that hadn't been changed in 30 years, that it did reduce some of the savings, but certainly did not eradicate them. So it wasn't a wash, it may be an impact. What that says to me, the first thing I'd like to say that hasn't been said yet is, from what we're seeing from the rates across the board from insurance carriers, there's a real benefit to telling your constituents that they should shop around. That it's not like some other things where, the price is basically the same at, if you go to, Meyer or Kroger, you might find some disparity on some items, but not significant. Whereas with your auto insurance, it may make a big difference for you, and what discounts are offered by a particular company, for bundling your policies or other things may make a difference. So we would encourage people to take the time to check with more than one company, or ask their independent agent what are the differences in price from different companies, because there will be differences between companies, not just to the PIP costs, but how it played out on those other kinds of coverages that someone may choose to buy, not just the BI, which is a mandatory coverage, but collision and other uninsured motorists and other things that they may choose to add to their policy. The second thing is, one of the things that you as a legislature outlawed was the use of zip codes, and we have rejected rates that took that into account. But there still are territorial differences that are allowed under the law, and we did not allow zip codes to be territory to be just a euphemism or some kind of a substitute for zip codes, and we tried to look at that. I can tell you that there will still be differences in rates in different areas, because the law allows territory to be taken into account if the risk reflected in the territory is different. That being said, because the PIP, we know PIP is a large percentage of insurance premium, that that people who are trying to save the most amount of money may stick to the mandatory coverages. So if you stick to mandatory coverages and PIP is a large portion of your premium, the reduction for people who are paying higher PIP, if it's a percentage, should be more of a savings for them. I can't say exactly what a particular person's premiums will be. The law was written in terms of a statewide average, and the law does not require an evening out of premiums across the state, but still allows insurers to look at different rates and risks in different territories and different experiences. So I don't know exactly how it will play out for every territory, but I do know that the statewide averages will be down, and that if people who are paying higher, if they get the same reduction, should see a greater dollar amount reduction from a percentage premium reduction. So we will also, like everyone, be looking to see how this plays out. You know, even the insurers were kind of in a zone while they came up with these rates of not knowing exactly what choices, how many people are going to choose unlimited, how many people in which areas are going to choose the lower levels. So it will be something that we will definitely be vigilant on as we go forward and look at how these rates play out in different areas. But there is a bit of an unknown exactly how it will affect certainly individual drivers and even individual areas. So if your consumers are seeing rates that they have questions about, they should question their insurer, shop around, and ultimately come to DIFS if they think that they're being unfairly treated.
And
I know our question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know our time is running short. So just one clarifying question, and then I know we'll end up closing. But quickly, you mentioned the statewide average. Do you have that, or do you know offhand what the statewide average is currently?
So they're at the different levels. The average reduction that at the unlimited was a minimum of 10. We saw an average reduction of about 15.5. At the 20% reduction for 500, around 30% was the statewide average that we actually saw. The required minimum at 250 was at least 35. We saw that in excess of 40, 41%, almost 42%. And for what was supposed to be a 45% reduction at 50,000, we saw about a 53% statewide average reduction. So they beat the minimum. Some tried to come in with just the minimum, and we sent them back and said it was a minimum. It was not a required reduction that you could rest on. You have to prove that you can't do better. And we sent people back, and we were able to achieve some additional reductions.
Okay, thanks for those additional questions. Let's turn it over to Zach to share where you can get more information if you didn't get your questions answered.
And also that you can email in your questions, and we put up FAQs and other things. So Zach will explain, I'm so sorry. I would love to be able to stay and answer everyone's questions, but I want to be respectful of the representatives and senators' time, staff that I've kept up, and of all the people on the phone who I'm sure have dinner and other things to take care of with their families tonight. So I'm sorry we couldn't stay longer, but thank you for your time, and thank you for sponsoring this, to all the representatives and the senator. And go ahead, Zach.
All right. Thank you all for attending today. As Director said, we did receive a significant number of questions for today's live broadcast, and we have simply run out of time. If we didn't answer your question directly, we do apologize, but please email your written question to the address on the screen, which is autoinsurance@michigan.gov, or give us a call at 833-ASK-DIFS. And please do check back on the FAQs, which Director mentioned. Those are posted to our website and updated frequently. Our website again is michigan.gov/autoinsurance. You can also connect with us on social media, including LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, where we post some of our videos. With that, I'd like to turn it back to Representative Wittenberg for our closing.
Well, thank you, Zach, and thank you, Director Fox, and thank you all for joining us. We hope this was helpful. We know there are a lot of questions. We're looking in the box here. There are a lot of questions, so please reach out to the department. They are the experts on this, and so reach out to them. They should be able to get you those answers. Obviously, we're all here to serve and help as well, and each of us will give our contact information. I just actually typed mine into the chat box, so you take a look there, but for those that can't see it, it's email me, Robert Wittenberg, at house.mi.gov, or call our office 517-373-0478. We are working remotely right now, but we will check your messages. And just to emphasize what the director was talking about, I actually, in my previous professional life, I'm a licensed life and health insurance agent. I don't do property and casualty. I don't do auto insurance, but I encourage you to shop around. Make sure you're talking to various companies or talking to agents that can help you shop around to get the best rate. So I want you to do that. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions or need anything. We are always here to support you, but I want to thank everyone for joining us and thank Representative Bolden and Senator Moss for partnering on this, and I hope it was useful for all of you. So Representative Bolden.
Thank you, Representative Wittenberg, and thank you to Director Fox, to DIFS, and to everyone listening and participating this evening. I think that this was very informative, and I appreciate the time that was given in order to kind of break it down and let people know what's coming down the pipeline. If you have additional questions, you can call the office. You'll have to leave a voicemail. We are still working remotely, but the office number is 517-373-1788. You can also email us. It's Kyra, K-Y-R-A, Bolden, B-O-L-D-E-N, at house.mi.gov. We can share additional information. I can talk to you about my motorcyclist bill and some other things that maybe we didn't have time to cover. So again, thank you for participating, and our office is here and happy to serve. I'm going to kick it over to Senator Moss for closing.
Thank you, Representative Bolden. Thank you, Director Fox, for helping us to coordinate this event. Two final thoughts that I will leave you with what the director has said and with what Representative Wittenberg and Bolden has said. Shop around. I think that is critical to find the coverage that works for you and your family. Right now in Michigan, I have a bill that would eliminate a billing gimmick called price optimization. If you don't shop around, it can give a little bit of opportunity for insurance companies to not give you the same rewards and discounts if you are somebody who is going to seek opportunities elsewhere to lower your rates and provide the coverage that you and your family need. So it's a gimmick called price optimization. I have had a bill every session to ban price optimization. But if you shop around, you might see more rewards and discounts than if you just simply sign the line, renew the system that you are, the insurance coverage that you have right now. So I think that's an important thing to do, to be a wise consumer. Secondly, as I said at the top, the premise of some of the reduction in auto insurance costs is going to be dependent upon what healthcare coverage you choose. And I think that you have to be a very wise consumer as well, to make sure you take in to account what care will and will not remain and at what cost. But I really would be remiss in this moment that we're living in right now, with all that's going on around us, not to acknowledge that as I sit here in my home 5 streets away from 8 Mile Road, systemic discrimination in billing has unjustly impacted Detroit and north of 8 Mile into our district. The bill that we have passed, as Director Fox has acknowledged, is beginning to break down that redlining by eliminating zip codes and other non-driving factors. I think that there's much more work to be done to examine whether or not those territorial zones are going to impact billing. But that's at least an acknowledgement in this bill that people in our communities have suffered under unfair billing for a very long time. That's a win here. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge as well. So DIFS has really retooled itself into a consumer protection division too. And I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that. And if you see billing discrimination, if you see an insurance agency or a plan before you that just doesn't look right, call the department. They are going to go to bat for you and make sure that you as a consumer are protected and make sure that you aren't taken advantage of as you look for the best plan for you and your family. You can reach out to my office. My Senate URL is senatormoss.com, pretty easy to remember. All my contact information is there. And again, I want to take the time to thank the representatives, Representative Wittenberg, Representative Bolden, Director Fox and her team for taking time out of our sunny afternoon to go over some important changes in the insurance law. So with that, we'll close out and we'll see you at our next online forum.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.